Well, first of all, the title. Math professor claims equation 2 plus 2 equals to 4 reeks of white, supremacist patriarchy. Unfortunately, it is not a clickbait title, and damn how much I want it to be, as she's a bloody math professor. Well, time to play. The idea that math or data is culturally neutral or in any way objective is a myth. I'm ready to move on with the understanding. Who's coming with me? Brooklyn College professor of math education Laurie Rubel tweeted last week to her roughly 1,200 followers. Along with the, of course, math is neutral because 2 plus 2 equal to 4 trope are the related and creepy math is pure and protect math reeks of white supremacist patriarchy. I rather think on nurturing people and protecting the planet with math in service of them goals, she continued. The tweet grabbed the attention of others within academia, including Harvard PhD candidate Kareem Carr, who said, "People say it's subjectivism to ask if math is Western. I don't get that. It's an objective fact that some groups were more involved in the creation of modern math than others. They may have been trying to make it objective, but it's not stupid to ask if they've actually succeeded." A little bit of self-promotion here. I have a video titled Rise and Fall of Science in Medieval Islamic World, where I discuss scientific advances including treating algebra as an independent discipline in its own right and cryptanalysis, and how it was based on earlier science developed by other civilizations like India. That's what science is. My point is, unless one has a very, very narrow view of limiting a very specific time in history, calling it white supremacist patriarchy is just dumb. There, I said it. One academic, James Lindsay, pushed back against Rubel's tweets, saying that the simple math equation of 2 plus 2 equal to 4 helped lead to significant scientific feats. It's certainly the case, and the work needs to be held firmly to the point that feats of engineering like space travel and rocketry utterly depend upon accepting stable meanings of mathematical statements like 2 plus 2 equal to 4 as objectively true, not mere accidents of culture, Lindsay tweeted. Exactly, stupid woke. There is nothing really to debunk here, right? There were a lot of awful replies, emails and so on. Obviously, that has become a point for her. Now here's a message for those bloody clowns who writes email or replies like this, especially Lee Gregory. Please get a lollipop and stand in the corner and let the grown-up talk. Yes, we grown-ups can say some real stupid stuff at time. Let the other grown-up handle it, yeah? Good boy. Do I know if this email is real? Well, no, but wouldn't surprise me. We have fanatics in every single belief. It crushed my soul finding out Buddhist can be just as evil. Don't ask. On her further tweets, she advised people to read some books and check some sites. Fair enough. Before commenting, I should at least show her the courtesy of doing so. First website is mathwashing.com. Okay, I read through it. Even some things I can agree with. Some I'm vehemently against. And mostly I despise false narrative. And this site lost me when it put the following text. This data will reflect current social inequalities, like women getting paid less than men, which the algorithm will consider the norm. That links to a 5-year-old article with the title, "Women Less Likely to be Shown Ads for High-Paid Jobs on Google, Study Shows." That is non-germane. Now this is the part I say goodbye to my very few viewers. It was nice having you guys. So here goes. Gender pay gap is not real. Please let me explain, as we are talking about math here. Can I give you a simple, silly example? Suppose I go to a first world country like USA and ask 10 top female performers how much they earn. Next, I go to Philippines and I ask 10 male jeepney drivers how much they earn. Finally, I present the data to you showing the huge pay gap between male and female. and the scale tipping completely to woman's favor. I don't know, maybe the man earns $1 for every million by the female performer? Obviously, you will call me out on that, saying it is not comparable. Exactly. You are completely right. That is the exact same deal when President Obama in 2012 took a real solid statistics and described it incorrectly by describing the pay difference is for doing the same job. That is completely incorrect, as the 77% figure compares all male and female workers, regardless of their occupation. We're not discussing the reason why women are more likely to be in reception, nursing and teaching jobs, where men are more likely to be a truck driver, a fireman, managers, and of course, computer programmers. Well, that link didn't play well. Well, next, she recommended 2 books. Well, to be honest, she needs to provide details and not go look it up. Extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. So no, you need to provide the fact and then give us the source like those books, so we can confirm that you didn't take it out of context. Read those doesn't work for me. A link to speed reading to John Ewing's on mathematical intimidation. Okay, well, it leads to a 7-page PDF document talking about value-added models. Here is part of that document. Here is a typical, although simplified example called the split plot design. You want to test fertilizer on a number of different varieties of some crop. You have many plots, each divided into subplots. After assigning particular varieties of each subplot and randomly assigning levels of fertilizer to each whole plot, you can then sit back and watch how the plants grow as you apply the fertilizer. The task is to determine the effect of the fertilizer on growth, distinguishing it from the effects from the different varieties. Statisticians have developed standard mathematical tools, mixed models to do this. Does this situation sound familiar? Varieties, plot, fertilizer, students, classroom, teachers? The document summarizes to, of course, we should hold teachers accountable. But this does not mean we have to pretend that mathematical models can do something they cannot. Of course, we should rid our schools of incompetent teachers, but value-added models are an exceedingly blunt tool for this purpose. In any case, we ought to expect more from our teachers than what value-added attempts to measure. After reading all the links, I still don't see how it is proving the point that math is the white supremacist patriarchy. We talked about Karim Curl's response earlier. He had some funny replies, some that might be called white knighting, like this reply. There are 2 factories. Each factory has 2 fully operational machines, as well as half the parts to build another one. If the 2 factories were joined into one, and the 2 halves of parts were built together, there would be 5 total machines, a case where 2 plus 2 equal to 5. Good lord. If you have seen any of my other contents, you might know that I have a habit of jumping to a completely different thread. May it be talking about Trolley or the great scholar Panini. At the end, I do try to link these together though. This is one of those moments. It's a marriage between 2 topics I'm super into, math and paradox. One of my favorite is Zeno's dichotomy paradox, as recounted by Aristotle in his text titled Physics. That which is in locomotion must arrive at the halfway stage before it arrives at the goal. Suppose the great virgin huntress Atalanta wishes to walk to the end of the path. Before she can get there, she must get halfway there. Before she can get halfway there, she must get a quarter of the way there. Before traveling a quarter, she must travel 1/8. Before an 8th, 1/16th, and so on. The resulting sequence can be represented as the formula shown on screen. This kind of series is described as Convergent series. Well, I'll let you, dear viewer, to figure out how Atalanta did reach the end of our path. In fact, how does any of us manage to get anywhere? The dichotomy paradox leads to a funny math joke. Well, I find it funny, sue me. A mathematician, a physicist, and an engineer were asked to answer the following question. A group of boys are lined up on one wall of a dance hall, and an equal number of girls are lined up on the opposite wall. Both groups are then instructed to advance towards each other by 1/4 of the distance, separating them every 10 seconds. The question is, when do they meet at the center of the dance hall? The mathematician said they would never actually meet because the series is infinite. The physicist said they would meet when the time equals infinity. The engineer said that within a minute they would be close enough for all practical purposes. I am an engineer. You hear that, ladies? Back to this factory reply. It is not a paradox, it is just stupid. He followed that explaining that he is simply offering a perspective in which one could reasonably justify this equation. No, they can't. Well, they can't do it reasonably. That equation completely discards the two half variables. Math doesn't work that way. Well, obviously Laurie Rubel doubled down and made the response to be patriarchal. Oh, grow up. You said something tremendously stupid, and if you are not a math professor, well, I wouldn't care. And the distaste I have would be the same if you were a guy. And I'm not white. Finally, there must be some woman disagreeing with her, right? She tweeted Martin Niemöller's poem. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Followed by, so, seems that they have come for me. Are you going to speak out? Well, first, I love that poem, and second, no, I'm not going to speak out. It's the same way I'm not going to speak out for anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, and so on. To quote Carl Sagan, the fact that some geniuses were laughed at does not imply that all those who are laughed at are geniuses. They laughed at Columbus, they laughed at Fulton, they laughed at Wright brothers, but they also laughed at Bozo the Clown. I kind of wish I knew a better Carl Sagan quote that would fit this scenario better. But well, it's already been a long video. Before ending this video, I would like to point out the obvious fact. Math is a tool that is objectively true. Now, do we try to manipulate it to suit our individual purpose? Hell yes. One of the ways we do it is by using graphs, which are really easy to comprehend and manipulate. How about some real-world examples? This one uses the trick of omitting the baseline. Chevrolet used these advertisements to claim that more than 90% of all Chevy trucks sold in the last 10 years are still on the road. Looking at this graph, it appears Chevy is almost 2 times more reliable than Toyota and many more times reliable compared to Nissan. But when we look at y-axis, we see the range is from 95% to 100%. So this seemingly huge difference is actually nothing at all. Then we have manipulating the y-axis. At a hearing on September 29th in the US Congress, Republican Jason Chaffetz of Utah presented this graph and accusing the president of Planned Parenthood, Cecil Richards, of misusing the organization's $500 million fund in an annual federal funding. And the congressman explained the chart. In pink, that's the reduction in the breast exams, and the red is the increase in the abortions. That's what's going on in your organization. At first glance, that accusation seems valid. But then you see that the chart has no discernible y-axis. So the placement of the lines is arbitrary. On left side, you have higher value on top, indicating number increase in y-axis. But on the right side is the opposite, where lower values on top. So does that mean 327,000 is more than 935,000? How about cherry picking? Well, here in our UK, national debt compared to GDP. This graph seems horrific, and you'd assume that the debt has been increasing recently and has reached the highest point in history. Without cherry picking, it would look more like this, and you can see it shows a different picture. I can go on and on about using multiple axes, misplacing positions, using wrong graph, and so on. I have added some links in description if you want to find out more. All these examples, you see an agenda. That is what it is. An agenda can be driven by both sexes, by all races and creed. It's not only us males. Nuclear fusion can light a city or set it on fire. And objective truth doesn't care on how you feel. Well, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this content, can I please ask you to leave a like? It only takes a second. If you can also subscribe, that would help me out a lot and would be thoroughly appreciated. Have a safe day. Signing off.